Hello, welcome to Tuesday's tip from the workshop. This is Tuesday tip number 20 and the final one. So thanks for watching these things. For this tip, I thought I'd walk around the shop and grab some of my favorite little hand tools. Many of these things you have, and maybe there'll be some ideas for use of some tools that you haven't thought of. So I made a little pile here, and I'll just plow through the pile. I feel like I'm not being fair to the hand tools I haven't thought of. It's like someone, receiving the Academy Award or something. I'd like to thank all these people. Oh, I'm sure I forgot to thank somebody. But I mean, this is just a quick little pile that I walked through the shop to grab. So I'm sure this isn't all of it, but here it is. You've seen this in some videos. You can get. Got this from a place called Micro Mart, which makes little tools for people, modeling tools. But I'm sure you can get it anywhere. It's for doing a 45-degree miter on lightweight wood for little frames. I find it spectacular for binding. So I use it. I've used it for years and years. I've never had to sharpen it or do anything. You see glues all over it from the binding, but you can put the binding in this is a preset 45-degree angle there. Of course, cut it straight or whatever. Anyway, this thing is something that I've enjoyed for many years. It's been very helpful. Another thing, even back before my eyes started to go bad, I got some jeweler glasses. Now you'll see they're all taped up to help hold them together. But this is great. I mean, you can be working on something and think, yeah, this is okay. And you take the glasses off and you realize it's really great because this really magnifies it. You can get different layers of levels of magnification. But once you've got it on, you can swing it out of the way and all. But again, very helpful, and more so as I'm getting older. Let's see. This is just a little tool that I like. It's a little plane I made probably 30 years ago. And back when we had a repair shop, we all would try to outdo each other making little tools. I just like it because it's cute. It's rosewood and ebony and dusty. But actually, the tool along these lines that I actually like is a metal one. I got for free from a sandpaper company. I was ordering so much sandpaper, they started giving me stuff. Coffee mugs and all kinds of things. But it's just a little cheap metal plane, but for many things this comes in handy. It just saves a little sanding time, saves a little filing time, kerfing, end blocks, bracing, putting a bevel on the top of the braces. It's just a great little simple tool, and it's cheap. You don't have to, I mean, it'd be nice to buy the fancy Swiss made stuff, but that works fine. Years ago I needed some little nippers. I had a friend say, you need to get some General nippers. The General is a brand name at this hardware store. And I thought, gee, this is an expensive set of little nippers. He highly recommended it. I appreciated his opinion. They were so stiff you could hardly open and close them. And after the first year, they have worked beautifully. So it's just a little heavy-duty set of small nippers. And this is something I did not go lightweight on. And I'm glad that I didn't. They've worked great. Here's something. Allergies have got me, sorry. Here's something. It's a little perfume container that I got. Obviously, it's not new. With a little, the top has got a little hole in it. There's baking soda in here. And this is where those of you who do repair work especially are familiar with the baking soda super glue deal. You can, if the nut is too low, you can, with the hole, it's easy to tap just a little baking soda into the slot and put a little drop of super glue in the nut slot that's a little low, and you can cut it to the right height. Of course, I haven't used this in years. That's why it's all yellowed and old. But when I was doing repair work, the guy may not want to throw down $30 for a new nut. So it's easy enough to do this. You can buy another couple of years out of the life out of the nut if you do one or two of these. So anyway, this came in handy. I just saw it and I thought, this was a cool thing. I really liked it, so I'm sharing it with you. Long-handled chisel. This is another one of those things that if this could be my only chisel in the shop, it's great to be able to get a low pair on something, such as if you're cutting the finish away under the bridge, where the bridge is going to fit. I just use this chisel all the time. It's something about the being able to adjust the angle and getting a real low angle. Also, the torque or the fulcrum effect you get from you get a little more pressure and power with the length of the chisel. For whatever reason, I really like this chisel. So again, this is something not to scrimp on. This is a Swiss-made chisel. So. Here is just a lightweight Estwing framing hammer. I don't use it for anything other than shop stuff. It comes in handy. This was a gift from my brother, and from 30 years ago, and it just means something to me. So I just, walking through the shop, go, oh, there's my Estwing hammer. I like it. So on the other end of the hammer spectrum is a little lightweight plastic hammer. Again, this thing is very old. It comes in handy for a million things in the shop. Tapping the end of my favorite chisel. Tapping down the binding as you go around and tape the binding in. I use it for a lot of stuff. So just a little lightweight hammer and a framing hammer, they both come in handy. I have extensive carving chisels. Early on I enjoyed doing carving and was fascinated by it, and I had some friends that were excellent carvers, so I was intrigued with it. So I got a lot of carving chisels. There's one carving chisel I actually use. And that is, can you see this? It's a very low curve. It has a very shallow curve to it. This comes in handy a lot for doing inlay work. The inlaid part of the hole, sometimes you have to knock something free. It's just something I use a lot. I can't think of all the reasons right now, but binding, just all kinds of things. This does come in handy. So if you're going to buy a carving chisel, I would recommend getting a very shallow one like this. Again, not cheap. This is it's worth spending the extra money on. Another thing I use a lot is a cheap X-Acto knife. It's fantastic. I use it for many things. The first thing that comes to mind is when I put the bridge on the top to glue it on, I'll score around the bridge with an X-Acto knife. So it gives me a guideline to go by for removing the finish, so the bridge gets glued to the top and not to the finish. So X-Acto knife comes in handy for a lot of stuff, including inlay work. So let's see, a good square. This is an expensive square. This is a little cheap carpenter square. I like this square. I don't like this square because this square is square and this square is slightly out of square. So if you're buying a square, make sure it's square. So I mean, it's probably good enough for cabinet work or something, but not for our level of work. I mean, if I'm going to use a square, it needs to be square. Expensive square, cheap square, favorite square. So it's funny though, you get attached to these things. Again, I've been using this for decades, so I always go to this little cheap square because I know it's square. So it's like, it's my square. Now here's something outside the box I think that most woodworkers don't know about. It's a ring clamp. And what it is, you put whatever it is you want to clamp. I just happen to have this is just I would never really clamp this, but I just had a razor blade sitting here. But see, the clamp with the wedge holds it in place. Now what this is good for, it's particularly great for inlay work. Put a little piece of inlay in this, clamp it up, and what I'll do is I'll put it in my vise so the inlay's floating out there, and cut the inlay out, and then as you need to rotate the inlay, you loosen it up, roll it back around, cut it out. But ring clamp, or jewelry supply. And years ago, it was hard to get curved pieces for rosettes. So this seems kind of ridiculous now because you can get them everywhere, but in the old days you had to cut your own rosette rings. So what I did was, I had you see a little hole here, and had a dowel on a piece of wood, and this would fit in there, and it would allow me to sand the curve that I needed in the rosette. So again, in terms of walking through the shop looking at tools, oh, there's my ring clamp. It served me well for a long time. So. Veneer saw. You're going to find that old rusty veneer saw. I let it get rusty because it's a way of sharpening it. Don't jump all over me. This is the old school way of doing things. I just like it like this, and it works great. But a veneer saw, works great. You may think, I don't need a veneer saw, I can use an X-Acto blade or whatever. No, no. Go ahead, this is a Kuntz. Go ahead and buy it and use a veneer saw because it's like magic. I mean, if you need to cut straight strips of veneer, take the veneer, put a straight edge on there, snap. I mean, it's beautiful. So I use this thing quite a bit. If you watch the fretting video, you're going to see some of this stuff in the fretting video. But one of the things that I've used is, again, a diamond. Let's see what it says on there. Yeah, this is a diamond USA made end nippers. You know, a lot of the fretting end nippers, these little bitty ones. I like this because you get a nice long. Again, it's easier. Although it's bigger, it's easier to snip the frets. It's just a regular end nipper. Take it on a grinder and grind one end flat, and it cuts things relatively square. Again, when I first got it, very hard and stiff, but that was only the first year, and after that, 40 years later, this thing works great. So this was well spent money. Again, not a cheap one. Set of chisels. I've got 8 of them. I use these all the time. I bought these back in the late 1970s in a little pawn shop in Victoria, British Columbia. And I lugged them around with me for years before I got settled into my more long-term home. And a lot of times I was going, why did I buy these chisels? You know, they're just a hassle to get to move from place to place, lugging all these tools with me. But again, these were Swiss made. I was amazed at the price in the pawn shop, so I snagged them because I could afford them. And I'm so glad I did. I use them all the time. So nice set of Swiss chisels. Rulers. Little cheap 6-inch rulers. These are great. They're all over the place. The thing to look for is they're stamped rulers, so make sure that the first stamping is right, because the whole thing will be off. So make sure the first 30-second is actually a 30-second. You can do that looking in the store, leafing. If you're at Home Depot, leaf through them all and find one that looks right. Or if it's not, you can come back and grind it until it gets to be right. But these little things come in handy, you know. And also it's nice to have them handy, so they're all over the place. I have a couple of nice machinist ones. They're satin finish, so it's easier to see with the glare. The dot is for me, so I can know, which of the size. The dot shows me in 64ths because I measure my action in 64ths. But a good cheap ruler, great. A lot of them. One good machinist ruler, 45 bucks. Take care of it, keep it in a safe place. But I use it a lot, and it's a pleasure to use every time I use it. The trick there is make sure you get a satin finish. It's much easier to read. So. This is one of these fat little scrapers I got from Stu Mac. I think Al Caruth had a hand in designing this. This is a great scraper. I've had it for a while. I don't know, maybe 10 years. I don't know, and have never had to sharpen it. It's just, you would think that, it's the old. I'll be right back. The old school scrapers are designed so that you can flex them and push and flex. So this is really outside the box. I mean, this thing is just hard as a rock. There's no pushing and flexing. It works great. So consider getting one of these. I love it. Every time I use it, I'm grateful that it got developed. And thank you, Al. Some of the little stuff. Let's see. A very good, this is a Craftsman little Phillips head. I've got some little cheap ones, and the cheap ones just booger up immediately. This is mostly used for putting a little Phillips head screw in the tuner, that holds the tuner in place. A couple of other things are these little, I forget what they call these things. Little, there's a word for it, I can't think what it is, but it's a little single holding, for a drill bit. So I use this a lot, and also I have a separate one that has a little taper countersink from Dremel's. So this comes in handy, just so you don't have to break out the Dremel and all this, or put it in your drill. Just doing a quick little touch up on the countersinks in the bridge, or wherever you need to keep the wood from blowing out when you're drilling a little hole. It doesn't hurt to put a little softness on the edge. So these things come in handy. As we're moving through the pile, a couple other things I'm glad that I got years ago are these long nut drivers. Again, easier to get in there on the truss rod. If the truss rod adjustment's at the peg head side, take the truss rod cap off, and it's easier to get in with them. But just the length of it, you can put more RPM, or you can put more horsepower on the nut with a long nut driver. So these are two of the typical size ones, and they're great. Along the same lines, since I like long things, are long screwdrivers. A long Phillips head, long flathead, and a long small flathead. Same thing. If you're used to using little short screwdrivers, consider getting long screwdrivers. Trust me, you will thank me later. These are the greatest nut files, and they're back. They were gone years ago. You could get them from Ibanez. These little metal nut files, and they came out. You couldn't find them anymore. The beauty of them is they're tapered on the bottom, and they're also tapered on the end. Now the old ones, you couldn't find them, so you kept breaking them off to get a fresh sharp one, because really the only thing you're using is the very end when you're filing. So because you can't go too deep because you'd hit the peg head, so you're only filing a little bit. So you keep breaking it off and breaking it off to keep it sharp. I tried that sharp file acid stuff, and it doesn't work. So you had to keep breaking it off. And luckily, they came back. Let's see, where's the yellow one? Yeah. They came back before I had to break too many off. The new ones have plastic handles and all. Anyway, these nut files are pretty ubiquitous now. They're easy to find, but in terms of nut files, there are a lot to choose from, and I have all of them. These are my favorite. So okay, we're almost through this. Makita. This is like my third arm. I use this for everything, from putting a drum sander in, to sanding, to drilling holes, of course, to countersinking the bridge pinholes, to everything. I just use this all the time. I have two of them. But let me back up for a second. One of the things that does come in handy is, in fact, let me go get it. I'll be right back. Be patient. So, I'm back. What I like is this little drum sander. See, I knew I'd leave something out. I mean, all I gotta do is start thinking about shit and keep coming up with more things. This comes in handy. I tell you, sanding binding, if you got a little spot on the binding, I just use this all life, shaping the peg head, shaping the heel. I have a variety of these little different sized drums, but it's great in the little Makita. And I'm sorry, it's not Makita, it's Hitachi. This is a Hitachi. I don't know about the Makita. I know that I've had half a dozen of these, and they work great, and they take abuse. And when it comes time to buy another one, I'm going to try to find another Hitachi, because it's been such a trooper for me for so long. So this is good. Bench brush. The only reason, it's not my favorite, I mean, bench brush is no big deal. I just think it's funny that this brush used to look like this brush. So, and I used to have hair, so I think I better stop working in the shop while there's still something left. I mean, before long, I'm going to be just a stick. So, anyway, bench brush. Another thing that has been of use to me for years and years, even before I really needed glasses, are reading glasses. I have several of these sets around, but again, even if you have great eyesight, when you're looking at something really small, like trying to dial in that nut height just right, put on a pair of reading glasses. They're cheap, they last forever. In the fretting video, I think Robbie still has that available on his site. I mentioned some of this stuff, but I just saw it in the shop as I was walking by. A shot hammer. I use this for more than just fretting. It comes in handy if something needs a blow. But a shot hammer is a hammer that doesn't bounce. The fretting hammers aren't like this. They're much smaller. They're shot inside there, so it doesn't, you're not bouncing around, so you have more control of the blow. But this is a body hammer from a body shop. So you can go to a car supply places and look for this thing. This thing's Chinese. It even is written in China on it. Let's see if it has a name. Nothing we could understand. but this is pretty common. If you want to get a good one, I got a cheap one, and this has done over 1,000. God knows, much more than 1,000 fret jobs, because we were doing 5 fret jobs a week for a decade back in the 1980s. So I mean, and all with this hammer, and the ends have never worn off. If you want to go to the next step, they make them that have the ends that screw off, and you can screw on a new nylon end. I don't think you need to spend the money, you know. But anyway, this has been great. It's my go-to hammer next to the Est-Wing. They're my 2 favorites. I think Bill Collings had a hand in this. This is a end nipper for cutting the little notch off the bottom of the fret tang when you're doing fret work on a bound fingerboard. Man, this made life so much easier when this came along. So I thank you, Bill Collings. Thank you. Another thing that's available from StewMag is the little fret crimper. That's another thing that it's occasionally the fret slot will be too wide for whatever reason. The fret wire doesn't match. This really helps give you a little more bite on the fret wire. You know, I like to use glue to glue down that fret ends, and I have my own fretting method. Watch the video. But this comes in handy. This has been a real time saver. So I'm a fan of this tool. I'm not a fan of everything that everybody sells. This is a specific tool that I happen to like. So let's see. Well, there's a couple more things. I think most of you have Klemza clamps or something like that. Not many people use these long ones. They're expensive. I have a couple of these, and I use them all the time. When the binding is drying on the body and the waist, I'll put one of these, and then from end to end I'll put one. In gluing the end pin strip on the body, I'll use a couple of these, you know, to glue the end pin strip. These come in handy a lot. When you get them, you're going to find uses for them. You'll think of ways to use it, and this is just a great thing. We're actually about to burn through here. Let me see, there's another big thing right here. This comes in handy. It's a marble cutting board because it's flat and it has sandpaper glued to it. So what I like to do, I'm not going to keep holding this. It's heavy. But I keep it around with a couple of grits of sandpaper if I need to touch up a nut or touch up a fret end, or not fret end, but a brace end, or just if I need something flat and I need to sand it flat, bottom of saddle, any number of things. It's nice to have that is nearby. Now, I think you've heard in the past I've mentioned, that works great. Another thing that works great, and I'm not going to lift them over here because they're heavy, but if you go to a marble countertop place, the sink cutouts for the marble countertop, they usually will just give you those. In fact, probably any place that makes, you know, granite or marble or just countertops these days, it's usually some kind of stone. You go out to the dumpster out back, there'll be a stack of the sink cutouts. Those things tend to be, you know, 1.5 inches, 2 inches thick. They're heavy as hell, and they're flat. So if you need a flat surface to glue sandpaper to get something flat, edges of the fingerboard before you glue it on, the plane that the fingerboard glues to on the neck peg head surface, anything that needs to be flat, you can glue sandpaper on that. Doesn't cost you almost nothing. I mean, they may, if they charge you something, it isn't going to be much for their scrap material off the counter, the stone countertop place. It's great. Comes in handy. You could buy one of those, surface machine, perfect Scientific America things and spend hundreds of dollars, or you can go get one free at the dumpster at the local countertop place. So that's it. I hope that you've enjoyed these Tuesday tips from the workshop. Be happy building guitars.